Have you ever wondered what someone might do if they suddenly discovered that their world, the life they thought they understood, could be completely turned upside down by the simplest, most unexpected actions? Imagine a life where wealth isn't just numbers in a bank, but a bubble of perfection, a seemingly flawless world that masks secrets and tests loyalty in ways no one could anticipate. Today, we're diving into a story that sounds almost unreal, but every detail is true, and it begins with a billionaire, a man at the top of the world who believed he could control everything, including the smallest corners of his household. His name is Marcus Denholm, a self-made billionaire who built an empire that stretched across continents, a man whose business acumen was legendary, whose reputation was flawless, yet whose personal life remained an enigma to everyone, even those closest to him. Marcus had everything, or so he thought. But deep down, there was an unease, a shadow that haunted his perfection. It started with a quiet suspicion, something subtle, almost imperceptible, a feeling he couldn't shake. He noticed the way his maid, a young woman named Elara, moved around his house, how she seemed distant at times, lost in thought, sometimes whispering to her young son, a boy of 7 with an intelligence that seemed far beyond his age. Marcus had always prided himself on knowing every detail about his empire, but now he felt blind in his own home, unsure of what was happening behind closed doors. One evening, curiosity and instinct collided, driving him to do something no man of his stature would ever openly admit. He decided to spy. Pretending to sleep, he would watch, unnoticed, from the corner of his lavish bedroom, a silent observer in the night, hoping to understand the strange pull he felt toward Elara's secretive behavior. The night was dark, the house quiet, every creak amplified in the silence. Marcus lay perfectly still, eyes closed, but mind racing, every second an eternity as he strained to hear any clue, any hint of what the boy might be doing, what Elara might be hiding. The suspense was unbearable, his imagination running wild, conjuring scenes that seemed impossible yet plausible in a world where wealth and secrecy often walked hand in hand. What he saw next would shatter his expectations and challenge everything he thought he knew, not just about Elara or her son, but about the fragile nature of trust, love, and loyalty in a world ruled by money. As the night deepened, Marcus's heart raced with anticipation. He could hear the soft hum of the house's security system, the quiet shuffle of Elara as she moved to the child's room. The boy, whose name was Lucas, was sound asleep, his small chest rising and falling with innocence, untainted by the harsh realities of the world. Marcus thought about how easy it would have been to confront Elara, to demand answers like a typical man of his power, but instead he chose patience, a silent watch that would reveal more than interrogation ever could. Hours passed, each minute stretching longer than the last, until finally Lucas stirred, rubbing his eyes and sitting up in a way that betrayed a mix of excitement and determination. He tiptoed to a small chest in the corner, pulling out a notebook and a collection of drawings that Marcus had never seen before. The pages were filled with sketches, maps, notes, and symbols that hinted at a mind far beyond his years, a child who was not only observant, but deeply thoughtful. Marcus felt a strange mixture of awe and confusion. How had a boy so young cultivated such understanding, such foresight? And then, the impossible happened. Lucas opened a tiny drawer and retrieved a small, intricately carved box. Inside were letters, some old, some freshly written, each addressed to people Marcus had never known existed. The boy's eyes glimmered, with purpose as he read each one aloud softly, almost as if speaking to invisible ears. Marcus's initial suspicion turned into intrigue. This was not mere childish play. It was intelligence, cunning, and something else, something deeper that he could not yet define. The room seemed to hold its breath as Lucas moved from task to task, his mind orchestrating a symphony of secrets that unfolded before Marcus's astonished eyes. Every action, every gesture spoke volumes about his upbringing, about the hidden lessons Ilara had instilled in him, lessons that Marcus had completely underestimated. As he watched, a wave of guilt mixed with admiration washed over him. In his pursuit of control, he had failed to see the brilliance that existed quietly, silently, in the smallest corner of his life. And now, the revelation was inescapable. Marcus realized that what he had intended as a simple test of loyalty would instead challenge his understanding of family, trust, and the true nature of intelligence, leaving him in a state of shock he would never forget. Morning light crept into the mansion, casting golden streaks across the polished floors, and Marcus remained in his position, pretending to have slept, though sleep had eluded him entirely. The events of the night replayed in his mind like a film, each detail sharper, more vivid, more impossible than the last. Lucas had approached his small desk and begun writing, meticulously organizing the letters and notes he had taken from the chest, as if aware of an unseen world only he could navigate. Marcus's thoughts drifted to Ilara. What had she taught? Him that Marcus had never noticed? The realization hit with staggering clarity. Ilara had raised a boy not to simply follow, not to merely obey, but to think, to analyze, to anticipate, and to act independently, even in the presence of a man as powerful and intimidating as Marcus Denholm. A part of him recoiled at the audacity, the brilliance, the almost reckless intelligence that had been nurtured under his very nose, in his own home. He recalled moments when he had dismissed Ilara's guidance, moments when he had assumed her position as a servant meant she lacked insight, yet here was the living proof of her careful, deliberate teaching. Marcus's mind raced with possibilities and fears, wondering what Lucas might do with his abilities, what doors might open, and what dangers lurked in a world where such intelligence could be both a gift and a weapon. And then he heard footsteps, the subtle creak of Ilara's approach. Her presence both ordinary and extraordinary, the weight of her unseen influence palpable even as she entered the room. She looked at Marcus with the same calm, unflinching gaze she had always maintained, unaware that he had witnessed her son's secret endeavors, unaware that the very fabric of their household had shifted in the span of one sleepless night. The tension in the air was electric, a silent dialogue passing between them, a conversation without words, where trust, suspicion, and respect collided in ways neither could fully articulate. Marcus felt the strange pull of humility, an unfamiliar emotion for a man who had always commanded, controlled, and dominated every aspect of his existence. The morning, with its serene light and the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee, contrasted sharply with the storm of revelation and uncertainty that now brewed within him. What Marcus had thought would be a simple test of loyalty had instead become a confrontation with brilliance, a revelation that left him grappling with his own limitations and the unforeseen consequences of underestimating the quiet, subtle power of a mother's guidance. Over the next few days, Marcus found himself drawn deeper into a complex web of curiosity, admiration, and a growing sense of accountability. He observed Lucas with the same vigilance he had once reserved for business. Rivals, yet now, the stakes felt infinitely more personal, infinitely more human. Marcus noticed the boy's ability to predict outcomes, to plan with precision, to read the moods of those around him, and to act decisively without hesitation, a skill Marcus had spent decades honing in boardrooms, now embodied in the small, quiet form of a 7-year-old child. The realization struck with the force of a thunderclap. This was no ordinary child, and Ilara's role as a mother was far more extraordinary than Marcus had ever acknowledged. Her influence was subtle, strategic, and profoundly effective, shaping a mind capable of navigating both the innocence of childhood and the complexities of an adult world with equal deftness. Marcus began reflecting on his own life, the empire he had built, the relationships he had managed, and the countless decisions that had brought him to the pinnacle of success. For the first time, he considered the idea that intelligence and influence were not merely the product of opportunity or wealth, but of guidance, encouragement, and sometimes the hidden sacrifices of those often overlooked. Marcus also started to see the ethical implications of his initial intentions. The decision to spy, the assumptions he had made about Ilara's integrity, and the arrogance that had driven him to believe he could manipulate or monitor the dynamics of a household without consequence. There was a lesson here, profound and unsettling, about respect, privacy, and the underestimated power of human ingenuity, even when cloaked in simplicity. Lucas continued his routine, unaware that he was the center of a silent, intense observation. And Marcus felt a complex mix of pride and remorse, pride for the child's extraordinary capabilities, and remorse for the intrusion that had forced him to confront his own misconceptions. The mansion, once a symbol of Marcus's control and authority, now felt like a living, breathing entity of lessons and revelations, each room echoing with subtle insights and silent challenges, a reminder that mastery over money did not equate to mastery over life or the human spirit. Weeks passed, and Marcus's approach shifted from observation to engagement, although cautiously, delicately, and with the awareness that any misstep could disrupt the delicate balance he had inadvertently uncovered. He began leaving small, seemingly innocent notes for Lucas, challenging him with puzzles, questions, and scenarios that sparked the boy's curiosity while carefully measuring his responses. Each note was met with thoughtful consideration, sometimes even with counter-questions, that revealed Lucas's depth of understanding and capacity for independent thought. Marcus found himself both fascinated and humbled, realizing that the boy possessed an instinctive wisdom, a strategic mind, and an emotional intelligence that rivaled many adults he had encountered in business and life. Ilara, too, remained an enigma, her awareness of her son's brilliance palpable, yet her interactions with Marcus continued to reflect unwavering professionalism, discretion, and subtle command of the household's rhythm. It became increasingly clear to Marcus that this mother-son duo represented something far greater than he had anticipated, a combination of intellect, resilience, and quiet power that transcended his previous notions of influence and control. The billionaire, once accustomed to dictating terms and outcomes, found himself learning lessons from the very people he had underestimated, lessons that challenged his assumptions, reshaped his perspectives, and introduced a new form of respect that could not be bought or demanded. Marcus began to see that wealth, status, and authority were fragile when compared to the innate capabilities of those who nurtured intelligence, fostered creativity, and cultivated moral strength within the framework of love, care, and trust. Every interaction, every observation, and every silent moment of the past weeks reinforced a profound truth. Control over material wealth was fleeting, but the impact of nurturing minds and guiding hearts was enduring, transformative, and sometimes entirely humbling. The climax of Marcus's realization came unexpectedly one afternoon when he overheard Lucas speaking with Ilara about a community project they were planning, a secret initiative aimed at helping children from underprivileged neighborhoods gain access to education, resources, and mentorship. Lucas's meticulous planning, attention to detail, and genuine desire to make a difference left Marcus astonished, not only by the boy's strategic mind, but by the depth of his compassion, empathy, and vision for change. Marcus, who had often measured success solely in terms of wealth accumulation and influence, felt an unfamiliar stirring in his heart, a recognition that true impact was measured in lives touched, not fortunes amassed. Ilara's guidance had instilled in Lucas a sense of purpose, responsibility, and foresight that Marcus had never encountered, teaching him lessons he could not learn from financial charts, board meetings, or global negotiations. In that moment, Marcus understood the profound consequences of his earlier actions, the decision to spy, the assumptions about loyalty, and the realization that power was not simply about control, but about understanding, empathy, and strategic foresight. Marcus approached Ilara later that evening, prepared to confess his intrusion, his intentions, and his newfound respect, unsure of how she would respond, yet compelled by the undeniable truth that honesty, accountability, and human connection were more powerful than secrecy, manipulation, or authority. The conversation that followed was a turning point, a delicate negotiation of trust, acknowledgement, and mutual respect, where Marcus had to confront his own vulnerabilities, accept the brilliance of both mother and child, and recognize that the true measure of power lay not in dominance but in collaboration, understanding, and the courage to learn from those we once underestimated. In the end, what Marcus witnessed that night, what began as a secret observation born of suspicion, transformed his understanding of life, relationships, and success. He learned that intelligence, integrity, and the power of nurturing were forces that could neither be bought nor controlled, only respected and embraced. Lucas continued to grow under Ilara's careful guidance, a young mind capable of extraordinary foresight and empathy, while Marcus learned to temper his instincts for control with patience, reflection, and humility. Their household, once a stage for observation and silent testing, evolved into a dynamic environment of mutual respect, learning, and quiet collaboration. Marcus's journey from suspicion to admiration, from dominance to humility, illustrates a universal truth. The true wealth in life is not in material possessions, but in the minds we nurture, the trust we cultivate, and the understanding we gain when we open ourselves to the brilliance and potential of others. What happens when a billionaire pretends to sleep to spy on a maid's child is not merely a tale of curiosity or secrecy. It is a story of transformation, revelation, and the unexpected ways that respect, intelligence, and compassion can redefine even the most powerful of lives. And as Marcus learned, the most shocking revelations are not always those that challenge our perceptions of others. They are the ones that challenge the very foundation of our understanding of ourselves, leaving us forever changed.